Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. I'm your host for this evening, James Copley. Gentlemen, how are we all doing?
Hello, mate.
Still happy?
Still happy. The voices you hear there, I've got Graham Atkinson from the Wise Men Say podcast, Sobs from A Love Supreme, and Ethan Todd back again. You appear on Speak Sunderland from time to time and also work in the journalism industry. Obviously coming off the back of Sunderland's unexpected, I would say, 1-0 victory away to Norwich City. Sobs, did you go down?
Yes, we did. Had a lovely weekend.
Yes, do elaborate. Tell us what's Norwich like for an away day.
It's not far to the ground. The town, if you like your good old-fashioned pubs, there's any amount of them in the town centre, and a fabulous curry house just opposite the King's Head. So most people in Row C could probably smell it the next day.
It's a bit of a bugger to get to Norwich, though, isn't it?
It is. If by road, it's not too bad. You get to Newark, and then it's 4,000 miles down a 2-track road. But by rail, it's not too bad. But obviously not for a Sunday morning. Quite a few people didn't make it because there was some disruption on the line between Darlington and York. So those who were going to get there about 12 o'clock, quite a few went back home before they got to York.
Yeah, it's a shame. Ridiculous kick-off time on a Sunday, really, that far away. That should be said, really. What did you think of the game, though, Sobs? Clean sheet, goal scored, and ended a run of 3 defeats. Just saying to Graham before we came on the podcast, I didn't see that coming, to be honest.
Well, I didn't, but the Norwich lads who were talking to the night before seemed convinced that they were going to lose. It was nice, like you say, it was a clean sheet, which was really good. We let them have a lot of the ball, which they did, but they didn't seem to. We didn't let them pass because there was some. Let's be honest, there was some pretty lives on the line defending to keep it out the box. Patterson was really well protected and did what he had to when they did get through, but they never really threatened Norwich. They looked the part till they got 30 yards out, and then we got stuck in the 2 wide men were tracking back really well, and it was a real gutsy, hard-working performance.
How did you see it, Graham? Obviously coming off the back of a 5-1 loss to Stoke City as well. It felt like the world was falling in. The sky was falling in on social media around Sunderland. Injuries left, right and centre. Great personality and character, really, by such a young group who have, let's be honest, decimated by injuries. I think there's 7 players out at the moment. 3 or 4 are season-ending injuries as well.
It was it was just a great battling performance, wasn't it? I think it shows that, we've got a very young squad, and that's inevitably going to leave us exposed during moments of the season, is sort of proven to be the case, to be fair. But they're still full of grit, they're full of character and desire to win second balls, and they'll give 100%, and you've got to applaud that. I think tactically, we seem to get it just right. The players sort of implemented Mowbray's instructions, I think, really well. They struck a good balance between that great sort of interplay that we've seen throughout the season, and a great sort of swashbuckling style, if you like. But also, as a team, they were compact. And I think without the ball, and that, I think that added an element of danger in terms of the counter attack, which I don't think we've seen as much this season. I think that 4-4-2 maybe suits Gelhardt, someone to sort of be alongside him rather than leaving him isolated. And then I think when we drop to a bit of a back 5 at times with Clark dropping deep, I think that helped sort of solidify. And help us get over the line. I think Norwich played to our strengths in many ways. I think that, like Sob said, they let us have the ball, they didn't seem intent on bullying us, and kind of that they weren't as physical as some of the sides that we've come across in the last few games. And I think as a result, I think it all just seemed to work in our favour.
Absolutely. Ethan, Graham mentioned Joe Gelhardt there. I thought he was fairly good against Norwich City, to be honest. I think his stats probably reflect that. The unfortunate thing for him is that he's missed a bit of a sitter, really. He seems to divide opinion amongst Sunderland fans on social media. I've heard him likened to a certain Will Grigg, which I just think is a bit ridiculous and over the top. But of the same volition, he hasn't exactly set the world alight since coming to Sunderland. There's various different circumstances around that. He's clearly not an out-and-out number 9 in the same mould as Ross Stewart. What have you made of him generally, and what did you make of him against Norwich?
Well, I think you've got to come at it, like, to be fair, from both angles. Like, any forward player, whether he's a natural number 9 or a natural number 10, or even one of the wide players, when Neil heads it over the top of the Norwich defence, you'd expect near enough anyone on the side to put that away. And it is unfortunate for him, but I think it's a case of confidence. I think if he's on a good goal scoring run, he probably sticks that away. So I think once he gets sort of the monkey off his back, I think he's not going to set the world alight like Ross Stewart has kind of done. But I think, like Graham said before, having him a bit less isolated, I think I was checking the average positions from the Stoke game and then this game, and you can see that he was dropping far too deep at Stoke because he was so isolated and wasn't getting the ball. And I know it's not his natural position as like a number 9, but he needs to stay up there further. And when he's got runners like Barr coming in close, I think helped him out a lot more. So I think I could see that partnership blossoming as the season goes forward, just to help him out and make sure he's not isolated.
Sobbs, he did manage to get the assist, Gelhardt, for Abdullah Barr's goal. I mean, it wasn't a sort of revolutionary assist, but it's a pass he still had to make under pressure. What do you see as his sort of best position and his best attributes? As I said, a minute ago, he's clearly not Ross Stewart, and that's part of the problem, is that he's trying to fill a Ross Stewart-shaped hole in Sunderland's team, and he's not a Ross Stewart-shaped player, which is pretty clear for everyone to see.
Yeah, I think with Ross Stewart in the side, his natural position would be clear, and that's he's a very energetic player. You can never question his work rate. And with a target man like Ross Stewart, who just a focal point is going to win the balls in the air. That even against Norwich, he's not going to do much in the air against Ben Gibson, is Gelhardt, but he ratted around on the ground, didn't give him a great deal of time. So we said that I think his natural position would become clear if there was a big centre forward alongside him or near him. He does the running round, picking up the little bits that the centre halves don't have time to settle on. And he benefited yesterday, as we've already said, from having Barr not that far away from him. So he knew that if he got the ball up front, there was somebody within 3, 4, 5 yards. He wasn't having to look way out wide to Clark or Roberts or even Ahmad, who wasn't there yesterday, but that sort of person to come in and collect the ball from him. And it was a nice goal from Barr. It didn't seem to travel that fast, but it left the goalie completely out of touch with the ball. It just popped in the corner there. It was a good hit.
Thoughts on that sort of flourishing partnership, Graham? The Barr sort of playing off Gelhardt a little bit. A lovely strike from Barr in the end.
It was, really good. I think obviously Barr's a technical player, having come from the French league, obviously under 19 French international. He's got a lot of natural talent, natural ability, and it's a championship's a physical league, and I suppose it's just a case of getting experience and knuckling down and getting the game time in, try and work in pre-season. Hopefully he'll start a little bit more next season, because he does seem to have a lot about him. I think with Gelhardt, it's unfair to expect, even though he's got a lot of appearances for Leeds, or relatively more than in the top flight than a lot of the lads. It's just unfair to expect him to, like you say, to fill that Ross Stewart hole, or Ellis Sims for that matter. I know Bielsa's talked about him being a number 9, but and Mowbray's comments after the match talked about him being a 9.5, and it doesn't look like that to me from the limited game time. He just looks like a 10, and
we've got loads of them.
And yes, we've got loads of them. And so, it's unfair to expect him to come in and be something he's not, especially or he doesn't appear to be at this stage of his career anyway, at this young age. But, you can't fault his desire, you can't fault his work rate. Certainly, questions could be asked around Will Grigg. I know there's a few comparators online, but you could question some of his desire at times when he played, but certainly you can't accuse Gelhardt of that.
No, definitely not. Abdullah Barr, Ethan, he's given Tony Mowbray a bit of a headache, really. He obviously came in to start against Norwich City for Amad Diallo. There was some speculation that he was going to be ruled out for the end of the season. Turns out that was just rumour, and he was taken out just to give him a little bit of a break. And I think he'd felt one of his muscles in training, so that was precautionary. But in the games coming up, Sheffield United coming up on Wednesday, and beyond that, Barr's given Mowbray a choice to make because Diallo's been good, but Barr's come in, done his job, and he's won the match for Sunderland. It'd be harsh to drop him, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would be unfair to drop him because it's pretty much since Stewart's injury and Geldart came in, we've been struggling to sort of bridge the gap between midfield and the forward being Geldart. And so far, I would say that Barr in that game has done the best job of it that we've seen so far. So I think, yeah, dropping him would definitely be unfair. But it comes back to the argument of that we do have a limited squad, and obviously we'd know, despite him being a loanee, that Amad is arguably our most technically gifted player. So if they fit, you've got to start your best players. But then I don't think it would be really fair to drop them. But in the same breath, I don't really see the system working with both of them in it without leaving ourselves exposed in midfield like we did against Stoke. And we seen that when Pritchard was sort of playing that deeper role and was bombing forward, Neil got exposed. So I don't think we can play both of them, but I think Barr's warranted another start, definitely.
How do you see that conundrum, Sobs? Because it's a tough one. Amad's, I think, Sunderland's second highest goal scorer in the league with 8. He's got 10 goal contributions overall. As Ethan mentioned, probably one of the best technical footballers in the league. You want him in your team, don't you? But as we've mentioned, Barr hasn't done anything wrong.
He's, I know in the last 3 games or so, he's had his Manchester United moments where things haven't gone right. He's been flapping his arms about, and you think, come on, don't be doing that. And then he comes up, I know it didn't get us any points, but he scores an absolute worldie at the end of the game, when he's done not a great deal before that. So he's worth picking just for that moment. It might be the only moment of the game, like Barrs was on Sunday, and it would win you the game. But like Ethan said, it's hard to drop Barr at the moment, and he can only get better in that position with more game time alongside Geldart. But we have got an awful lot of people missing at the moment. Yeah. I know there's talk of perhaps Dan Neil having a rest, but the way he played yesterday, take away the fact that he got exposed once and lost the ball, but he really dictated the way the game was going. And he's going to get booked because whether it's he's taking it on himself or he's being told he's now the mouthpiece that gives the referee grief every time. There's a dodgy decision, and goodness knows there were enough yesterday when Norwich seemed to have 2 tactics. If they've got the ball and they get nowhere, fall over. And if you lose a tackle, you pretend you've hurt yourself.
That Max Aaron's dive was terrible.
That was hilarious because I was directly across from that, and Clark was 2 yards off it. The referee's got a free kick. It's unbelievable. I mean, the poor linesman who was stood in front of us, he was apologising for being behind the player when there was 2 of their players yards offside. He was getting such grief from us, and he was sort of saying, "Sorry, I wasn't there." And that's your job, mate. Anyway, back to Dan Neil.
It is maybe a broader conversation around the standard of refereeing, though. I mean, we thought the Championship would see better standard than what we saw in League One, and arguably it's the same or worse.
I would agree.
It's not just questionable ones. It's like the first goal against Stoke. I know it made no difference to the end result, but he ignored 4 rules of the game. For the drop ball wasn't theirs in the first place. It was 50 yards away from where we had the ball. Their bloke hadn't been invited back on. The goalie gave him it anyway. Moan.
Yes, no, I completely agree. I think the standard of officiating has been hilarious at times this season. The one that sticks in my mind actually was the beginning of the season. I think it was QPR at home when Dan Ballard broke his foot or fractured his foot, and that wasn't even given as a foul. I couldn't believe it. Don't think that, just to have a bit of a rant, I don't think the QPR player had gone to intentionally injure him, but the fact of the matter was he stood on his foot quite heavily. And nothing was given. But anyway, I digress. You mentioned, Sobs, Dan Neil. I want to talk about him. Graham, I love Dan Neil. I think he's a fantastic player. I love his story. One of my favourite stories at Sunderland. I agree with Mowbray. I think he's destined for the Premier League. But he's played a lot of games, and if you cast your mind back to last season, he was taken out by Alex Neil because he was shattered. Same with the likes of Callum Doyle. I know he's a year older, he's a bit more experienced, but he is playing a league above. He's played a lot of football this season. I just think somewhere along the line, we have to have a responsibility to him to maybe take him out, especially with the game coming so fast on Wednesday. You've got Ekwa there, who I know hasn't played a lot of senior football, never mind football for Sunderland. But that's one I'd be looking at. I know Sunderland want to win the game and go for the playoffs if they can, but you run the risk of another long-term injury. I feel Dan Neil's right on the edge, to be honest, right on the edge of that injury threshold.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I think, but that's part of the dilemma, though, isn't it? With the profile of the squad, is kind of there is who else is there? You know, you're potentially looking at 09, bringing him in playing in that slightly deeper midfield role. But obviously, with the injury situation to Sergen and Alessi, then he's covering the left back. I'm not sure there was, in fairness, probably would have been much of a clamour to play 09 in that deeper role from a lot of supporters. But you know, here we are. There is little option really in terms of that depth. The Evans injury has kind of left us exposed, and you know, Dan Neil is probably the best bet of the group that we've got.
And he's actually in a bizarre twist. He's actually Sunderland's most experienced central midfielder now, fit.
Yeah, and you know, he probably does need a rest, but I just feel like Mowbray's in a situation whereby his options are limited. So yeah, let's see. Maybe if Serkins comes back then soon, then maybe we could look to play an 09 there.
Is that a change you'd look at, Ethan, bringing 09 in the middle, or potentially Ekwa? How would you negate that if you were Tony Mowbray?
I think you're right in what you're saying. I think Neil is probably on the cusp of even realistically with how congested the fixture list is. Even Dan Neil out for 2-3 weeks he's going to miss 5-6 games at this rate. So I think he does need a rest, but then also he doesn't seem like the type of guy who would shirk any responsibility. I think he's the type of guy who wants and expects to be playing every game. But I think the 09 in centre midfield kind of divides the fan base slightly. And I think if he's going to play 09 and Mishu in centre midfield, then I think you've probably got to change the formation slightly and bring probably Ekwa in alongside those two, and possibly even Gooch at left back to cover that position with 09 moving into centre midfield. Then that doesn't really fill me with too much confidence, especially coming up against a good side in Sheffield. So I think if he's going to stick with Neil in centre midfield, then it negates some of the problems that we've got. But then also, if he takes Neil out of the team, we do look weaker defensively. So I think it is a bit of a headache for Mowbray, but I do agree that he needs to come out even just for a game.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the major dilemma, isn't it, Sobs, is that Dan Neil is so crucial to the way Sunderland play. Mishu's come to the fore a little bit. I think he's gradually improving game on game, but it's a midfield that's light on experience. I mean, is Ekwa someone you'd look at to bring in? I quite like him, but
I like him, but we saw him
amazing against Norwich, did he?
He's a big, strong lad, but he lacks that little bit of, I think it's game experience, where he's just not that sharp across the distance that stood out a bit on Saturday. You know, he wasn't covering the yards that Dan Neil does, because Dan's got a hell of a stride on him and moves about well. Don't forget, we're all getting the game off a week Saturday, aren't we? So that there's a bit of a rest. But like Aidan said, Dan Neil would never voluntarily accept not being picked if he's fit. He wants to play. And I think it's a mental thing as much as a physical thing with him. He's getting, like he says, I think he's got that responsibility now that he's not captain, but he's in the Corey Evans position where he's got to do the talking, linking the midfield with both attack and defence. He's in the referee's ear. He's going to get attention because of that. And we saw on yesterday morning, the referee was, I've got my hand in my pocket, next tackle you make, son, I'm going to boot you, which he did. So that's going to keep happening. We'll get a suspension out of it. at some stage before the end of the season, I feel. So we get a rest then. Personally, I would leave him in and hope that, you know, the week we get off for the international break is what the whole team needs. You know, you get a chance to regroup and have a bit of a rest and, you know, work out some more on the training ground what to do. Because it was obviously a lot of good tactics employed yesterday morning to change things around. As like we've mentioned, we were compact without the ball. As soon as we got it, we spread wide and really dragged their defence across the field. So, yes, I'll personally, I will keep Dan Neil in till someone breaks. That's why I'm not a football manager.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that international break. Actually, that's a good point. So there'll be a bit of a fallow week end for Sunderland to get some rest in, which I think is much needed. Just staying with the Norwich game quickly, Ethan. I feel like when Sunderland are on telly, it's like life, death, taxes, and Luke O'Nien going viral on social media. He's done so once again. I mean, I found the incident quite funny. Do you think he crossed the line in any way? I mean, it's borderline. I suppose you could argue one way or the other that he shouldn't be doing that, but it is a game. It is supposed to be a bit of a laugh. You know, Sorensen hasn't reacted well. I'm glad that more hasn't been made of it. It's been sort of seen for what it is, tit for tat, to be honest, because I think you need characters like that in the game, don't you? And as I say, it was an exchange. Nothing came of it. I'm actually quite pleased that Sorensen wasn't booked either, because I think it's if you start booking players and sending players off for every incident like that, then you're going to have sort of like 7 or 8 men, 9 men on the field every time. What did you make of it anyway?
Well, it was comical. It was really comical. Like it's just typical O'Nien to obviously, go viral for all the right reasons. And you do need those kind of characters. I think with the way sort of football coverage has gone, I think it's a lot of fans' gripes that players are now so media trained and that they struggle to show the real personality. And obviously Luke O'Nien does that week in, week out. It was definitely nothing more than, a bit of gamesmanship. But I do also think that, not necessarily crossing the line, but I do think that maybe if that happened and Norwich were winning 2-1, I don't necessarily think Sorensen would have the same reaction. But I think that some fans are definitely overreacting about it. It's a bit of gamesmanship, and it's a bit of tit for tat, pushing and shoving, like it always happens on the touchline. And I'd much rather be a case of him trying to kiss him than trying to punch him in the face. So I think it's just a bit of gamesmanship. I don't think it needs to go any further than that, and it makes for a more interesting spectacle, which is always better from a fan's perspective.
How do you feel about it, Sobs?
I think it's grand. We met the team at Peterborough Station on the way back. We were getting off the team bus and obviously getting the train. So I got a picture of myself giving Luke a kiss. That's been the most popular ever Facebook photograph. So we call him Smooch now. It is like Ethan says. It diffused the situation, which could have, if he'd not smiled at Sorensen and then give him a cuddle and then give him a kiss, it could have ended up with something a bit worse. Bobby Kerr did the same thing many years ago when Arsenal kissed Pat Rice when things were getting a bit tetchy down at Arsenal. We got a 0-0 draw, and that was hilarious at the time because he did that. And, I think that's all it is. It's a little daft incident, and like Mowbray says, they're not robots. You've got to rest them from time to time. You've also got to accept that some of them have got a sense of humour, some haven't, and it made everybody in the ground happy, I think. Apart from maybe Sorensen for a brief while, but you look back on it, there's no harm in it. There's no malice. It's an entertaining incident. End of story.
Does he perhaps need to be a little bit careful, Graham, going forward, Luke O'Nien, because he does like to wind people up, doesn't he? And he does play on the edge on occasion. We've seen him see red in the past, but it's one of those things, isn't it, with Luke O'Nien? When you're winning and everything's going for you, he's a tremendous wind-up and you want him on your team, but when it goes wrong, it can go wrong quite brutally.
It feels like, what is he, 27, 28 now? So it's unlikely he's going to change. That's just his character, I guess. I mean, it feels like, for me, a bit like what Ethan was saying. I do feel like it's gamesmanship, and I feel like he's almost on yesterday. I feel it was almost he's doing that to try and elicit a reaction, to try and to get the lad booked or get the lad sent off. I mean, at the end of the day, he had his hands around his throat, didn't he? So I mean, that could have worked. yeah, that could have resulted in a different outcome there for the Norwich lad. So and you think back to, I think it was the QPR game, when they got a pen, he goes down before the penalty's taken with his phantom kind of cramp or whatever it was, and that kind of that player that winds opposition up, or opposition supporters up, with those kind of that gamesmanship, that kind of in-game management, the dark arts, what do you want to call it? We had Chris Maguire who used to do something similar, and every team needs them. And I feel like we probably in League 109 we've got one there, but arguably we need one or two more and it's usually the more experienced or the older players, isn't it? The ones who have kind of played the game a little bit longer, who kind of know how to see out results, and it's those sort of things that wind opposition up and just kind of make it more difficult, I think, for the opposition team to feel like the momentum's with them when the player does that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Joe Nicholson, my colleague at the Echo, is probably going to have a Sheffield United preview with a commentator or pundit or journalist from the Sheffield United end, but we'll preview the game briefly here as well. The form of Sheffield United subs is a bit patchy, that everyone's sort of had those top two positions in the Championship sort of signed, sealed and delivered for a long time, but the emergence of Middlesbrough, Sheffield United have just dropped off a bit. Looking at it now, there's only 4 points in it with a lot of football to be played. Obviously, I think Burnley will definitely finish first, but there's a bit of pressure on Sheffield United at the moment.
There is. I think the way things are going, Middlesbrough look certain almost to, since we dismantled them fairly comprehensively in our place, they've got themselves sorted. And if it was a choice between them and Sheffield United, I would pick Middlesbrough at the minute. We just hope that their dodgy form continues, doesn't turn the corner at our place on Wednesday night. I'm not sure what it is that's gone wrong with them. I know they beat us down at their place, but had Dan Neil stayed on the field, ironically enough, we'd have probably got at least a point out of it, or won the game. So I'm not sure what it is that's changed about them. They've always got that. The one who sounds Scottish but isn't, I can never remember his name. He even looks Scottish, but he's got a Cockney accent. The big rough centre forward. If he's not starting, he comes on and he gives you defence grief. But I think we've got the Ballard and Bath. We've got the lads who will sort of relish that kind of challenge. And if he goes anywhere near 09, who knows what will happen. But if we play like we did on Sunday, and we, obviously tactics will be tweaked to accommodate what it is that the opposition will do, because they'll be different to Norwich, that's for sure. Then we've got to hope that they continue in their slightly dodgy form, and we continue in what we started yesterday at dinner time.
Is it McGoldrick or McBurney I'm thinking of? I'm getting them mixed up.
That's the one, yeah.
McBurney,
yeah,
not it. McGoldrick. McGoldrick's gone somewhere else, hasn't he? I think.
Yeah,
I think he has. Anyway, Graham, Sheffield United, what are your thoughts on them? Obviously, former Sunderland man, Paul Heckenbottom as the manager. Just looking at their results, actually, I'd forgotten they'd beaten Tottenham in the FA Cup. In the last 4 games, they've either won 1-0 or lost 1-0. So, although the form's dropped off a bit, it's not like the shipping goals left, right and centre like Sunderland have done.
Yeah, I mean, they got beat off against Luton, I think, didn't they? And then, yeah, as Zob said, the pressure's on them. If we're looking for positives, the pressure's on them on Wednesday, and Heckenbottom's going to need to keep his side, calm, and because like we've said, we're snapping at the heels. They've probably got one eye on the cup. Is it this weekend? The next?
It is,
Sunday,
yeah.
It is Sunday against Blackburn. So they might have one eye on them, and as a result, that should mean the pressure's off us, and we do sort of excel, if you like, when the pressure isn't there. I mean, this whole season has been one of where the pressure isn't on us for the first time in a long time. We're not expected to get automatics or get promoted, or we're not. It would seem we're not scrapping for relegation to fight relegation for the first time. So it's, I mean, actually, if you think about it, 52 points, I think would see us even if we weren't to win it to get another point for the rest of the season, the last 4 seasons, that would probably get us 18th or 19th. So
yeah, I think the bottom three need to get 2 points a game to catch us.
Yeah,
which is going to be difficult for them. Yeah,
absolutely catastrophic, wouldn't it? A series of events. So here we are, before Easter, and we're effectively safe. So that should provide an extra sort of spring in the step, if you like. So yeah, I feel like Sobs was saying, like, a different proposition, and maybe we need to look at the tactics. And I think I agree with that. At the same time, I feel like it was the way we played without the ball against Norwich. I feel like was really effective, and I think that added a bit of an extra dimension, that counter-attacking style player, which I feel like we haven't really exploited very much this season, and I wouldn't mind seeing us do that again on Wednesday night.
Yeah, certainly another string to the bow. As Graham mentioned, Ethan, Sheffield United do have that FA Cup quarter-final against Blackburn Rovers, Sunday, 12 o'clock. Chance to go to Wembley on the line. So there is a chance that they could possibly look past Sunderland. But the caveat to that is they need to win as well to keep Middlesbrough at arm's length.
Yeah, I think I don't think they're going to opt out of one or the other. I think obviously any cup run for any side is a fantastic occasion for the fans. And then also when I wouldn't necessarily say they've had a wobble, but the form has dipped slightly over the last 5 games, and they've got Borough, whose momentum just continues to keep rolling, and they've got Borough breathing down the neck. I think they will have one eye on the cup, but then also they've got to maintain the league form because they know that Borough is chasing them. So I think it will be a tight game, but they're second in the table for a reason. They're a very good outfit, and we said the same about us. We were playing really well and then had a bit of a wobble, and then we seem to have obviously steadied the ship against Norwich. So they might be thinking that against us, when we think and we're coming back into form, that it's their chance to kind of steady the ship and show to Borough that they're no fools.
Interesting, yeah. You live in Bishop Auckland, don't you, Sobs? You must have a few Borough support mates over that way that are quite pleased at the moment.
There's one or two. There is one or two, and they're obviously happy the way things are going, as we would be. They've settled in nicely with Carrick. He seems to have taken all his experience that he gained between packing and playing and taking on the manager's job. And he's after it took a while to bed in, but he's got them singing now along the right lines.
They remind me actually of when Keane took over in the was it 06-07 season. The January they've had has been superb. They've got Ramsey and Archer from Aston Villa, but then they've got Barlaser as well, who came in from Rotherham. And I just think they've got I agree with you, Sobs, actually. I think they've got the hallmarks of a side that are going up. Momentum's so big in football that I think they're going to probably do it. And I think if they don't, they'll be a proper force in the playoffs. They're a really good side. And, Sunderland competed with them and beat them, which, with a couple of more signs, it could have been there for us. But that's a conversation for another podcast, I think. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Hope you've had a good time. Graham, do you want to tell us a bit about where you can find Wise Men Say's content and whatnot?
Yeah. Check out wisemensay.co.uk. Plenty podcasts. The Monday show, the preview show, the post-match crack, and a lot of written content. So yeah, check that out.
Sobs, plenty going on at I Love Supreme as well.
Yeah, we've all got a Facebook full of nonsense. Quite an active. Yeah, we've got plenty of writers kissing footballers, all sorts of things. Twitter feeds on match days, etc. The printed magazine, as well as the old-fashioned website thing that some people still do.
Brilliant. And Ethan, you're across Twitter as well, and across a few podcasts also.
Yeah. Well, the Journal and the Chronicle is the main ones I cover, and it's been a lot of Newcastle coverage lately, but it's nice to see some positive Sunderland stuff creeping in.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me on the Raw podcast this week. You can subscribe to the Sunderland Echo for ad-light coverage and all of that jazz. We'll have updates before the game against Sheffield United on Wednesday, including Tony Mowbray's pre-match press conference, which I think is tomorrow at 1 or 11. Double check with our socials for full details of that. And yeah, once again, thank you for listening to the Raw Podcast.